Hi, these are full interviews I had with Brent Copeland, Eric Fullerton, and Wes Wilson of the Control Point podcast. This was made as an addendum to my documentary video on the main channel. So if you somehow stumble upon here without watching that, I highly recommend you watch that first. Some of these have some cool info about Control Point, but you'll find a lot of wisdom, a lot of nice conversation, and I genuinely hope if you're into learning more about these people that you honestly enjoy. So that's about it. Thank you.
Okay, I'm Brent Chaos Copeland, one of the hosts of the Control Point podcast.
Awesome. Thank you. Can you give me your own like personal recount of how Control Point as a podcast began, how that all started? Well, walk me through it.
Oh my God, that's so long ago. I bet our answers, all three, will differ.
That's
Because
why
I
I'm
don't,
asking.
right? Because I don't remember the initial let's do that kind of thing. Because I guess Eric and I had been doing Dead Workers Party stuff with film, and we had done a podcast with World of Warcraft, and then I think Wes kind of joined us in that at some point because he had a clear. I think I remember. Or wait, I don't know. Anyway, and then I'm trying to think of why we got into the I guess TF2 was just coming out, and I'd played the original Team Fortress. I was in like a Quake clan and
Right.
NCNJ, Net Connection Net Junkies. It was two small groups that got together to make a clan, and we would play Team Fortress at this net cafe because we could have multiple people play at the same place, which may sound bizarre these days.
Right.
But back then, everybody was on a modem, and so you couldn't really play multiple people unless you were on a LAN together. So we thought we'd have the edge to play these Team Fortress matches against these other Quake clans across the globe, which was amazing back then because internet was new ish. And so anyway, we played a lot of Team Fortress back then. I knew Wes a little bit at that point, but we didn't really do anything besides like D&D. Some did not know Eric then, but then fast forward to when we're doing podcasting, and TF2 definitely was gonna play that after how many years waiting for it, right? Like,
Right.
what, they're actually doing it? And so we were already podcasting, so we decided to do some podcasting. And Spencer, I don't. I know Spencer was a really good friend of Wes's, and I think Eric knew Spencer. I didn't know Spencer at that point. I met him with the
Right.
podcast, and I think Wes said, "Hey, he would make a great like fourth person for the podcast." And so
Right.
then we said, "Let's roll with it and do the Dead Workers spin on everything with it, and start it up."
Was this like a revolutionary idea at the time? Because here's my thought process: is like podcasting itself was pretty new at the time. Video game podcasting was even newer, and like it's kind of baffling to make a podcast about a first person shooter. When you're making if you want to make a video game podcast, you'd do like an RPG or an MMO or something you can talk a lot of numbers about and whatever. So like a first person shooter podcast, that seems like a pretty novel. Was that a pretty novel new thing at the time, or did it just feel right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, novel as in that not many other people were doing it,
Right.
right? There, I mean,
Right.
people weren't really making content per se for a lot of stuff like that. There was. I don't even know how big Twitch was at the beginning because we were using all these other like streaming services to do
Like
um,
Ustream
our
and
podcast.
things like that.
Yeah, yeah, and we started streaming on Justin TV, which was the original Twitch. That's what Twitch was born out of. So we got like our original account from there, and so yeah, it was kind of new to do this streaming thing. I'm pretty sure it's because we were doing it that Justin said, "Hey, let's do this." No, so yeah, it was new, but we had been doing podcasts, so we'd been doing a film podcast, we'd done one gaming podcast, we'd been making videos, machinima. We had done a music video for a WoW. Actually, it was a WoW contest that they held with the band of the Ataris. And so they, had said with machinima.com, I think it was at the time, was the place where you watch these videos. It wasn't even YouTube. And anyway, we came in second in that. And so we got to go to the BlizzCon to like promote the Dead Workers. It was bizarre. So yeah, it was all kind of new, video games and podcasting for sure, because you pretty much had Leo Laporte and then a bunch of people making podcasts that no one knew.
So now that like we've talked about that, can you give me like a little bit of a synopsis of your day like week to week when you guys were in the full on control point swing? Like how did a episode of the podcast come to be from start to finish?
Yeah, well, I mean, it kind of morphed, and some of this is a little hazy, but essentially we would start a document, the show notes,
right?
And it would be like the episode number, and we might come up with a title for the episode. Then we'd have our 4 names, and whoever's name was going to read it would be in bold, I think. And then throughout kind of the week, we would kind of come up with topics or things. At the beginning, we didn't really have submissions yet, so it was more us trying to come up with content. And originally we would kind of come up with topics or things.
Yes, yeah.
And so those were kind of the episodes, and that was the thought of like, we'll kind of detail this class. And so we'd play that class that week and try to get some like more knowledge, because some of, we each kind of had our specialty that we liked playing more than others. So it's like, it's Spy Week, and everybody's like, I haven't really played Spy much, except for in the discotheque. That's the only one.
Cyberpunk.
Yeah. And so we would kind of do a little bit of, I guess, just background on the class. And then later on, we started getting submissions. So we'd be going through those submissions, kind of seeing, which ones we thought would work in the show. At the beginning, it was like all of them, of course, because it's just like, you just need the content. And so it's just kind of, there was just a lot of back and forth talking about that. A lot of it was done on the day of the show, too. Like, we would show up at Eric's house is when we started off. And,
right.
We may be drinking, we may not be drinking, but it would be kind of like a few, an hour or two of like figuring out all this, what we're going to put in the show notes. Then we'd record it, and then we'd have like a post show where we're potentially still drinking, maybe not,
right.
Playing music and just goofing around, listening to songs, and playing a bunch of music you can't play on streaming services anymore, because back then no one cared about
copyright
what music you played on the stream.
Yeah.
Now it's a no. You gotta use the right stuff.
Were you surprised when like the podcast started and you started those TF2 servers and everything? Were you surprised when like a genuine community and like camaraderie, when all that started happening? What were your thoughts on the community you fostered over those years?
It was just kind of like, I'm getting chills right now, just like you saying that, because it was just, it was something unexpected. And it was something that when you're in the moment, you don't probably appreciate it as much as later on, but it was just amazing. These people coming together, them doing stuff, them willing to go to like CP Con, people flying, to these things it seems crazy, but to be like a part of it, and it's like you're doing this because the four of us are talking about this thing you're passionate about. And some of it, I think, is because they want to see each other, more than us.
Right.
We're just tangentially there, but just being a part of it is great. So it's like I love going and seeing people who listen to the show as much and played on the servers with us. So it was always, that was kind of one of our tenets when we first started, was it wasn't so much like, we weren't like, okay, we're going to talk to this server and see if we can get them to pay us. It was, let's talk to the server and see if we can get some servers, for free.
Right.
So we're not having to pay for it, but that, our, listeners can play for free. So it was trying to kind of pass it along to the community instead of just like, hey, how can we make money off it?
Right.
Because as much as I'm sure we would have loved to make a lot of money off any of it, like that wasn't really a thing at the time, right? Like,
right.
There wasn't Twitch and YouTube paying out people that you knew of for this content, so it wasn't like we were trying to do that. It was more like, hey, maybe we can make a few bucks to get some beers for the show and be funny.
I imagine it was like insane to go to like a CPCon or Dead Workers Party, pay, and just like sit down and then have like a big room of people just ready to listen to you talk about TF2.
Yeah, it was, it's nerve-wracking sometimes. It's like, I'm not a person who likes being in front of crowds. I don't like crowds
Right.
that much as it is. I think that's maybe why I like podcasting stuff more so, because it feels like it's just the four of you, or the three, or the two, whoever's there at the time, versus like being there like at CPCon when you're sitting there and there's like, just lines of chairs of people sitting there and you're talking, and at any second you could say something really stupid, and I'm probably are going to, just because, hey, that's how we roll.
So you had stage fright. Crazy. You had stage fright recording those.
Yeah, I mean, always a little. It's just like I played in a band from like high school and a little bit of college for a while. So, and we played in front of some fairly big crowds, but it was always still nerve-wracking. Like stage fright always happens. Like I'll get it today, even just like at the office in a meeting with 6 people that I work with. I'm just not,
even after really everything.
Yeah. And a lot of it may be that with the show, it's like there's not, there's a difference between like just talking and happen to be funny and then like trying to be funny.
Right.
And live, like we might throw out some ideas. Hey, this would be funny if we did this or that. But it's like as soon as you start the show, it's like all that kind of goes out the window because you're just sitting there talking and chatting and doing stuff, and so there's not really any try.
No do-overs.
Like, yeah, there's no do-overs, right? Not really. I mean, it's. I remember when we first started podcasting for our film one, we would try to edit these shows to like all the right, out of the whole thing. Yeah. Reduce pauses. And I remember like we were taking hours to edit these podcasts. Like we're talking 6-8 hours for 1 hour long podcast. It was crazy. And I remember we did it so badly one time, like we had to like stop because it sounded like a couple robots, because it was so like staccato. We'd taken out like every like imperfection and basically made it imperfect, and it was like, okay, that's silly, like we got it. And so we stopped. Like we don't edit podcasts anymore. Like we edit possibly music beds and segments and things like that, but we don't go in and take out any and it's like that's us. And so it's just, there may be like some technical issue, or maybe there is some part that had like just for whatever reason a train wreck. We may have like cut and like say, okay, let's But I don't even remember that really ever happening. But I could see that would be the only reason why. But we probably would have just kind of rolled with it, whatever happened.
So do you have any stories? I'm sure you have many stories, funny, shocking, exciting, anything you can share with me right now. Just comes to your mind. It's like, yep, that was something that happened.
Nope.
No, oh, okay.
I you know I I like there's so many just like little things, like I remember going up to or right before going to one of the CP cons in Birmingham, which is about an hour and a half away from where the three of us live. I painted I had a so for a few years, and it was during this podcast time, I was buying instead of buying like a new car, I would buy like $1,000 car and
Right.
then drive it into the ground and sell it for $700, and then go buy another $1,000 car. And so like they were some really shitty cars. And sorry if we're not. They're
No, no,
really
it's fine.
crappy
It's fine.
cars.
It's fine.
And so I had a man. I think it was like an '89 Prelude was one of these cars.
Oh.
This is not a time when anyone drove '89 Preludes. Like so old, and it smelled like when you drive like an old '60 like Beetle, like you could smell the get oil just burning, and it was horrible. But we painted the logo of the Dead Workers logo on the front of the car, just
Oh.
huge stencil, and drove it up there to the CP Con, and so that was a lot of fun, and surprised the car made it. It's
That's awesome.
it's a long drive, but so that was I not really a crazy story. Like I can't think of anything that's just like crazy.
Right.
That like we're a little silly. I don't know if we did anything crazy.
Well, my next question doesn't make much sense now. My next question was, so out of all these stories, which one's your favorite? But I guess there are no stories, so. Yeah.
Well, now I feel sad. Like I'm like, oh man, and it's probably just my memory. Like,
No, I'm sure.
So
I'm sure
crazy.
if you sat down with like Eric or Wes, it'd all just start coming back.
Yeah, yeah. Like, and maybe I'm thinking of like crazy, like in a different like vein, but like
Maybe.
so. There was one time, and I think I saw you mention it, maybe the same one, that there was a podcast where we interviewed someone, and it got really heated because they were doing some kind of service where they were like basically making I guess it was almost like a whitelist, blacklist for like servers, and how they were doing it. I don't know why, but it really just irked me. And I'd probably have to go back and listen to the episode to like remember exactly what they were doing that really just kind of pissed me off.
I listened to it the other day. So basically, back then in TF2, there were these items that Valve released for free that you had to just do achievements to get.
The achievement servers.
Right, and then there are people that went on achievement servers to just get them immediately, to just farm them. And then this person that you got on the show had a list of, he called everyone who did that cheaters, which didn't sit right with you, I remember in the episode. He called them cheaters, and he made a blacklist, started sending it to all these server hosters to just have them banned from all TF2 servers. But it turned out that if you paid for their membership or something, you were excluded from that list.
Yeah.
That's basically the gist.
Hello. Like and that dude probably hates me today because I'm sure he wasn't expecting that, coming on the show, and that's not nice to do. But I was young. I wasn't on my Adderall back then. Shit happens.
It was an entertaining listen because it was just you and him going back and forth while Wes was like, "Well, come on, guys, come on."
Yeah, don't be a complete a-hole to this dude. Come on. But yeah, that's so stuff like that happened, but I don't think stuff like that happened too much. That was probably the only time I can think of.
From my understanding, after you guys started fizzling out with Control Point, and it wasn't really that cool to you guys, right? Can you talk about that? Can you talk about how you guys fizzled out of making the show? How'd that happen?
Yeah, and it's a weird thing because it's like you can love a community, um, but I think the issue really came in the fact that we were playing other things. We're playing Minecraft, and getting into Minecraft. I honestly don't remember if we had started the shaft yet, but it feels like maybe we had started the shaft at that point. I'm sure we did because our last CPCon, it was like when
Both.
Minecraft meets.
Yeah. Yeah, basically, for a lot of people, the shaft that is awesome.
Yeah, so we're obviously because there's the Shaft podcast.
Yeah,
I'm
and
an
there's
idiot.
control point. For a lot of people, the shaft quote unquote killed control point because you guys completely shifted focus to that.
If it hadn't have been the Shaft, it would have been something else because it was just simple that like to talk about something for an hour or two, like you got to play it or
Right.
people like they're gonna lose. They're not gonna want to listen to you talk about Conan because that's what was happening. We would spend like, well, I didn't really play much of TF2. I played Icarus or what, Carrium or whatever
Yeah.
stupid game. And so it was like we started doing Nation of Gamers to try to kind of do that, to talk about other stuff and that it wouldn't bleed into like Team Fortress 2. But we just weren't playing as much, if any, at the end. Um, Maybe some with the community, just a little bit. But it's just like the show would have just become trash.
Right.
And so it's like we could have either taken TF2 the game and turned it into homework to where it's like, okay, we each got to play X amount this week and make sure we're to continue it. And the only reason you do that is because you want to get paid for it, right?
Right.
That and I think the community's not going to want you to do that, right? They're going to want you to play it because you want to play it. At least the community that's
Right.
friends with you, right? I'm sure there's people that just want something to go on because, it's like watching that TV series for 10 years and then it goes off the air and you're like, oh, well, that sucks. I wish that they would continue it even with trash writers, No. Um, all you need is a taste of that and you'd change your mind, probably. So we just started trying to think of like how can we kind of do what we like, which is the talking stupid about something we're doing. And at the time, it just happened to be Minecraft and other games, and try to get people who are currently listening to us because we loved our community. We just wanted to
Right.
move them to the next thing we were doing. And so I know, we did the episode 50 or
100.
whatever the 100.
There was 50.
It was 50 and 100.
And then 100. Yeah.
And so we played that live at the CPCon and let the people there know that we were ending the show. And so it was, it was trying to go out. I say on top, just saying that as a phrase, going out on top. We knew it was not going to be a good show if we continued to do it.
So you can be honest with me here. The peak
Always.
of the peak of Shaft or the peak of Control Point.
I mean, it's like apples and oranges. It's like how do you
Can't compare.
how do you you don't have a favorite child,
Right.
because it's they're two different things. Like, I mean, they're the same thing, but different things. It's just like I loved all the people that were listening to us at the top of Control Point. I loved all the people that listened to us top of the Shaft. I would say maybe what might give Control Point a little edge was there was a little bit of it felt like there's a little bit more back and forth, kind of like with I don't know. I don't even want to say that. Like I think, yeah, no, they're my two babies. I don't have a
Right.
favorite. You
Well,
know,
would you say interaction with the community and the quality of the community itself was like like better with control point or better with the shaft? Because I hear something that Eric mentioned was that when you're playing TF2, there's only 24 people that can be in one lobby, and then you start talking to people a lot more than you would in Minecraft, which doesn't even have like a voice chatting function. So did that lend itself to you guys being a lot more tight knit, or was it about the same?
I would say it probably was more tight knit because Control Point was a smaller group for sure. Than the Shaft kind of community. It was more than, yeah, it was just a lot more people, so it's impossible to get the same amount of like connection with that many people, and so you get spread thinner, for sure.
Right.
But there was still kind of a tight knit, group that was probably about the same size as Control Point. That I feel just the same about. I would say with Control Point it was a lot newer. Like we had experienced a little bit of that with Control Point when we were doing the Shaft. Um, and then the Shaft, it was probably a little more of like, hey, maybe we could actually, because things were starting to change on the internet where like maybe we could actually make this a job and kind of roll this as like another division in the Dead Workers Party where we're doing film and podcast and games. And part of that also kind of diminished what we were doing at the same time, though, is the problem. So that's probably why I would say Control Point kind of edges that out, just because it wasn't, there was less to do about money with
Right.
Control Point and about like a job, right? Where the Shaft, we really did try to roll that into like, hey, let's try to make a living doing this. And whenever you make your passion your job, it's a struggle and definitely takes a lot of some of the passion out of it. you
It's
know
definitely not exactly the same. I can relate to that. You
yeah
lose something along the way.
yeah it's probably like, if you think of like Tiger Woods. I don't know if Tiger Woods had a brother or sister, but they're, say he had an older brother and their parents had that child and they loved their kids the same. But when Tiger came along and they were like, man, Tiger can set us up forever,
Right.
and Foxy Jr.'s, not doing so,
Right.
still love him the same.
Right. Right.
But one's good. No.
How different is your life back when you were doing Control Point compared to how it is right now?
Oh, I would say, it's drastically different, right? Like when we first started, when we were doing Control Point, I just had one child, and actually had my second child, during it. But it's, they're like younger. But work was, at the time I was doing, working for a contractor for the government, so it was like really kind of, it was just kind of like you went and did your hours and you left. It wasn't like anything that like you were, man, this is going to be I'm going to do this for the rest of my life kind of thing, and putting your heart and soul into. So it was a lot of, there was a lot of, time to mess around at work and make graphics and do like stupid stuff. I don't think they can fire me now from there, but um, and then later on it's just like now it's like my job is like takes a lot of my time, and family takes a lot of time, and um, early on with Control Point I wasn't like building additions onto my house, like, and I don't mean having people come and build them. I mean like myself, right? Like, so like I'm doing a lot more like crap around the, that kind of
We
stuff. So
we
it's,
had to delay this interview for a metal gazebo, right?
yeah, it's up now.
Oh,
It's all up.
congrats.
Yeah,
Congrats.
that was, we put out like 80 bags of rock last weekend, for other work.
Went from
But
Minecraft to playing it in real life.
yeah, and let me tell you, Minecraft is much more fun.
I can imagine.
So I don't know, but it's just oddly enough, I'm busier now. Because I would love to like start another podcast or do another podcast or stream. Like I've been playing a lot of like my playtime is really early in the morning right now. Like I get up at like 5:30 with the puppies
Uh-huh.
and take them outside, and so then pretty much 5 or really 6 to 8 is when I get my gaming in. Right,
Right.
6 to 8 a.m. in the morning. Like back then, it was like all night long. Right, it was
Right. After
like,
dark.
yeah. So that's changed because now at night I'm spending time with the family, taking care of the dogs, going to bed at 9 o'clock. Like what
Oh,
the crap?
that's scary.
Right? Well, and a lot of that was, like I said, when we first started Control Point, like I wasn't on Adderall. I also wasn't. Another big change in my life was, I got diagnosed with sleep apnea, and it's a lot of weight issues there. But the fact was, when I went in for my sleep test, they're like, "Yeah, you wake up." It was like 70 or 80 times. Um, I forget if they do. Would it be a minute? Or it's probably an hour, I assume. That seems like a lot for a minute. But it was like way off the scale of like what it should be. And they were like, yeah, you're not sleeping. Like you are absolutely not sleeping any at night. Because I would sleep for 12 hours and feel like ass.
Right.
I started the CPAP machine, and I started, after you have like this initial period where you're just kind of like catching up. So I was still like sleeping like 12, 8. But then all suddenly it was like I slept 5 hours. And I felt like I had slept for a year. Like I felt so good. And so it was like I was able to like essentially, go to bed at midnight, wake up at 5, that sort of thing. But now it's adjusted back to where, I pretty much go to bed I go to sleep probably 10 to 12 and then wake up at 5:30.
Right. Right.
So anyway, just general lifestyle has changed. Now, the weird thing is it's probably about to change again because my eldest child is finishing up college.
Right.
And my youngest child is going off to college. Whereas my eldest child actually stayed here and went to college in town. So I don't know if they're going to be moving out. We haven't heard anything about that, like getting a job or anything, moving out. But with my other child leaving and going down to, a couple hours away from us, like it's going to be a huge change where it's just, me and the wifey,
Some more time on your hands.
I feel like there'll probably be some more time. Hopefully it's not going to be building more crap outside. Cause,
Another gazebo.
I mean, how many gazebos does one person need, right?
One for
I
each
think one's
family
enough.
member.
Oh, no. No.
No.
I'd say everybody gets to make their own gazebo in life. And
That's poetic.
yeah.
I like that. That's poetic.
I don't hear that much. I don't normally say poetic things.
How describe Control Point, not the podcast, but just everything from the community to the podcast and everything. Try to describe it in a couple sentences. Just like how it's the effect it's had on you.
Control Point, getting to meet, work with people like Eric and Wes and Spencer for such a long time, and it may not seem like a long time to everyone else, but going and doing conventions and just spending this time and getting to know people, them getting to know you, it's almost like a marriage, and you go through things and you learn so much about yourself, good and bad, that I feel like it's changed me for the better, because I feel like that working with such great people, they actually even help me see things maybe about myself that I didn't like as much, and was able to change, I feel. And then being able to experience all that, and with a community of just amazing people who did just, I mean, all the feels like, from just comments and music and content that they submitted, and just the willingness of people to do things that, like, I don't know if I would be willing to do it for another show, right? Like I did it because we were doing it for our show, and I like, it floors me that people would just take the time and effort and energy to do all the stuff that they did. It's just amazing. And you know, you can see it through all the things we did throughout the years, that we tried to come back and kind of pull, I think, some of that back in, because we did miss just that community and that feeling, even during and after the Shaft and other shows. So it's definitely been life-changing.
So if there's anything you want to say to anybody before we stop recording, and that'd be a good time.
I you know, it's not possible to single, like,
right,
anybody out. But I would like to say to you, like, thank you for doing all this effort. I know it's like herding cats to get us all recording and doing different things, and hopefully this recording actually, you know, saves right, and I can get it to you. You know, I'm sure it will.
Well, but, hopefully.
But man, like, this is awesome, and I am absolutely, I am really excited, and can't wait to see it. And you know, if anything, I'm nervous about is just sometimes I hate hearing me. You know.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I mean, that does mean a lot. This has been probably the most excited I've been to make something yet. Like, I've been making things while I was in diapers, but you know, this is this is the biggest thing I've been making so far. So hopefully, I don't fail anybody in that regard.
Well, you have 3 hours of stuff to go through with Eric. just that alone.
I cut.
Oh my god, dude!
I cut those 3 hours down to an hour, so the people will only see 1 hour of that.
Okay, so you've already been cutting that.
Yeah, no, I've been working around the clock.
That's crazy, because it reminds me of, like, one of the whole reason the Dead Workers Party started was this thing that was called the music video shootout. I don't know if you've heard of this yet or not.
Yeah,
but
no.
We were doing, or I guess it was JD, Will Box, and Eric were going to do this thing where they were going to have teams in 24 hours, or maybe it's 48 hours, shoot, edit a music video. And they were going to have a contest with a bunch of bands submitting music. One of them was going to get picked, and then they were all going to come in. And so then we were going to film this 4 groups for 48 hours. And I had been doing this thing called Cyber Mole, where we had people who we were playing. There was this TV show called The Mole. I think we talked about this. Anyway, and so these people were coming here to actually play a version of it that we did. And so I was filming it, and I made a version that I put out on DVD. And so they heard about that, and they're like, well, that'd be great, because that's kind of what we're doing. And so then I heard about it, talking with them, and it was like, that sounds like crazy. And so they're like, well, let's make a whatever, and we became the Dead Workers Party. And we did this, right? So we got the song, we had the 4 teams, we had multiple cameras on each team shooting footage for those I want to say 24 hours. It was 24 hours, not 48. It felt like 48 because there was like no sleep happening and all these. And anyway, it was so much footage. And back then, it wasn't like there was nothing digital, right? It was all on cassettes. So we were having to like sit there and export this out, to the computer. And we just had, just hard drives and hard drives of footage. And we never got this thing edited because it was so much footage and we'd never had that much stuff to go through that we were like start editing and get these like little pieces done. But it was just kind of like we didn't have a budget. So it was, everybody was doing this while we're doing all these other projects.
Right.
And it was just like, it never came to town. Like it just never, and it was just so, and it came down to, in my eyes, it was just too much footage for the four of us to deal with. And so that's why when I hear you like 3 hours, one interview, I'm like, oh man, I feel for you. I know it's a lot to do. So man, big props to you.
Hey, I'm Eric Fullerton. I hosted and produced the Control Point podcast back in 2007. And it was one of the best times in my life, actually.
Why don't you walk me through the beginning of Control Point, but in a little, I think we've already spoken about it a little bit, but why not a little more detail, like how it all came to be, since, it started 2 weeks after the game came out. So how did that come to happen?
So I really wanted Half-Life 2. It starts with Half-Life 2, really. And so I buy the orange box, and I got the T-shirt, the Half-Life 2 T-shirt, which I have still around here somewhere. It's so old, but so I love the game. And then I'm like, what's all this other stuff that I get? Team Fortress 2? Okay, I'll try it. I was kind of reluctant at first, really. I was like, it's only a multiplayer game, because at the time, I was just like kind of interested in like story-based stuff and solo stuff. But anyway, so I pop it in. And I'm playing it. I'm like, this is kind of cool because it's not like serious. It's not like Call of Duty, and it's not like, I don't know. I just feel like I could just goof around with my friends with this. So I call up Brent, dude. We have to. Have you played Team Fortress 2? And he's like, oh yeah, of course. I love TF2. Like, and he's like, you never played the first one? And I'm like, no, I didn't even know it existed. He was a big TF Classic player, I guess, and I never even knew it existed. But anyway, so then we're just both goofing around on it. We're like, dude, we have to get Wes in on this, and Spencer, all of our friends. So we were having so much fun with it. So at the time we were doing a World of Warcraft podcast, and it was kind of dwindling out. I don't know. It seemed like we needed like a new big project, and this is the game that just made us super excited about doing something. And we're like, what should we do? Like some videos or some, like, I don't know. Let's do a podcast. Certainly nobody's going to listen to it, because like, who would listen to a video game podcast? Because there weren't too many back then, and certainly not for like first person shooters. I mean, that's definitely a weird subject matter for a podcast. I mean, I could see WoW, because World of Warcraft had thousands of items and lots of locations. It was a very complex game. So essentially starting this podcast was almost kind of a joke. It was kind of a troll, really, just to do it and put it out there and fail and just kind of laugh at it, go, haha, look what we did. But for some reason people loved it, and it just kept going, and it just became a thing. Oh yeah, like as time went on, and custom maps were a thing, and community, Steam, right? Steam had just began, basically. As time went on, it made more sense, and we kind of forgot the fact that we started this as a joke, and we're like, no, this is real now. Like, there's so much meat to it, But at first, it was honestly just something stupid to laugh at.
Is it true that the first episode was recorded in your bedroom?
Yes. It was. Oh man, it was such a stupid setup too. So we had a lavalier mic, right? We
Yeah.
taped it to a an exercise bench, you know, like that you would lay down on. You know, it was just we're just like finding, hey, there's something, drag that over here. We taped it to it, and we all kind of sat down next to the bench so that the bench was kind of mouth level to us, you know, because we're all sitting Indian style on carpet. And that was it. We just hit record. I had a recorder, I guess, of some sort. Hit record and just started talking, and yeah, that was.
I
That was
I didn't even picture it that way. I just imagined like you guys were on like a king size bed, like in a circle, like it's a sleepover.
yeah. So after episode 1, I think we recorded episode 1 and 2 at the same time, and
Yeah,
then
same day.
yeah, same day, and then we put them out there, and I think we had already started getting some sort of feedback. I can't remember, but it basically told us, well, we should just keep going until it fizzles out. Like, how many can we do? And in fact, I think that was a joke. I wonder how many episodes Control Point will have. Maybe 10? I don't know. Maybe 13? We ended up with over 100. But so an average episode would be so me and Brent would have a Google Doc. Even back then, there were Google Docs. We all just shared a Google Doc, and we would put bullet points in there, you know, what we're going to talk about. And, you know, we'd put the date and whoever's there, and we would share the doc to all four of us, you know, and then everybody could let us know, no, I'm busy that day or whatever. But so as we kept filling out this little document, it kind of showed us that, hey, we can like play around and have different segments. We can play around with the format, and every week we can adjust it until we're happy with it, until until the audience is happy with it. And that's kind of how all these little things started. It was like at the beginning of the episode was, hey, in this episode we're going to talk about this, and then it became a skit, right? It was like, well, let's make every single section some sort of event, right? A skit, a sketch, or some sort of thing with meaning, right? That way we could have a bumper. We could really make this thing almost like we're kind of thinking about it like a cross between Saturday Night Live and like Conan O'Brien or something like that, you know?
I assume that's when the briefcase and stuff like that.
Right. What's in the briefcase would be the contents of the show. So we knew that section always had to be filled out each week. And then we had listener contributions and all the other little things. But yeah, every week it was during the week it was play TF2 and always be aware that this document exists. So it just open it up whenever you think of something. Open it up and jot something down. And it became this, like we'd have like a bookmark right on the toolbar of our browser, you know, that just says like, you know, episode 3, you know, Control Point. And anytime anything happened, I'd click it, add some notes to it. So that's how the shows became very full, because we were always conscious of that document. And then as we filmed the shows, we could talk to each other through the document too, because, you know, when someone types something, it's updated for everybody else who also has the document open. So we could like, you know, talk and joke and, you know, just whatever. So I think that became a thing. We tried not to mention that too much during the show and kind of keep it like our hidden little secret, but yeah. And then after a show was recorded, you know, we would always record in my my spare bedroom until we got a studio, and that was years later, I guess. Can't remember.
Later on, yeah,
Yeah,
it was like the majority of Control Point was recorded in that studio.
Yeah. And then so yeah, after it was done, and then I would edit the shows, and man, at the beginning, it took a long time to edit. It was so dumb that I would sit there and remove the ums and ahs and little, you know, gaps of you know, dead air and stuff like that, because I wanted it very like polished, like a radio, you know, like
Right.
like talk radio, because I was really into talk radio around that time. XM radio had just come out, and I had that in my car, or maybe it came out a couple years before that, but I remember listening to talk radio in my car, going, man, this is cool. This was before podcasts were a thing. So when I heard talk radio, I was like, man, that'd be cool to like have my own show one day. But how could I like be on the radio? And then years later, it was like that was my inspiration to even be a podcaster in the first place. Anyway, so I would edit these shows, and it would be like 10 hours of editing. It's so stupid thinking about it now. I'm like, I would never spend that much time nowadays, because all those little tiny details that I did, I don't think it was really worth the time. But it still sounded good, and as time went on, I found shortcuts, and things got better. But and we had a voiceover guy that we were filmmakers at the time, so we had a voiceover guy, our go-to guy, and he did. We asked him to do voices for the bumpers and for the outro, like the Dead Workers Party slogans and things like that you hear at the very end of the episode. We recorded lots of stuff with him, so we and then we started taking calls too. Getting like people to call in and having to edit those in. So there was quite a lot of bits and pieces that went into each episode.
So is the film guy you mentioned, is that the guy who goes like, you're listening to Control Point, a Team Fortress 2 podcast with Brent Copeland, Eric Fullerton, Spencer Williams, and Wes Wilson? Is that the guy?
Yeah. He did most of the voices for Control Point 50 and 100. He was the narrator, the guy, the announcer guy. And he did. I think he did listener contributions and a couple of other bumpers. But yeah, he had a cool voice.
What's his name? So the people know.
Oh, Colin C is his name. He moved to Japan, so he's no longer here. But yeah, cool guy. One of the most rewarding parts of hosting the TF2 podcast was the community that sprung up around it. It completely surprised us, but it was so cool just knowing that, we weren't just like players, but we were all just kind of this big, tight-knit family that grew together, in friendship and skill, right? In the game itself. So that really occurred after, I guess around, I don't know, episode 10 maybe or so. We opened up a forum, and this was before. Was this before Reddit? I don't even remember, but we had our own forum on our website. People could come in, log in, and talk, and topics, and old school forums. And that's kind of what started the community, because we kept seeing these same names come, and they would talk and they would comment on the shows. We weren't putting our episodes on YouTube, so we weren't getting comments. This was just an audio podcast, so the only way we could hear from anybody was our own forum, in the form of conversations and just people having fun. And then later on, when streaming video was a thing with Ustream, Ustream I think was the first one we tried. There was another one called livestream.com or something. Anyway, after we put our stuff on that, it was just then it was like a big community. It was happening because they could see it live. They could chat. The chat room just became a thing at that point. It was like, we're never going to not live stream an episode ever again, because the chat room is just way too much fun, And then Steam as a program, or as an app, started growing too. So you could leave comments and you could talk on that. And we could create the Control Point group. I guess that's what it's called. Yeah, the group.
Yeah, Steam group.
Yeah, the Steam group. And then we could schedule play times. This Saturday night. We always called it CP After Dark. CP After Dark this Saturday. That's when everybody, drinks and just, becomes really idiotic, and just we play all night long, and we mess around. We troll people because we're admins, so we can make everybody gigantically large or whatever we want, right?
Made a whole song about it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So yeah, I'd say probably around episode 10 is when all that happened, but it really stemmed from those forums. Yeah.
How was, I mean, I guess it's such an open-ended question, but how was the Control Point community? What did you think of the community you guys cultivated through your show?
We loved it. We there were so many different types of people. There were a lot of young people that gravitated to us, and we didn't really think it was that weird, but we would always interact with people differently depending on their age or appropriateness, right? But our real tight knit group were people that were kind of around our age, and we did this in our 30s, early 30s, I guess. And now I'm in my late 40s. But people that were in their 30s, our same generation. That's kind of who we always kind of stuck with. But everybody was really cool. There wasn't a lot of drama or trolls. Like I guess back then, if there was a troll or somebody griefing or somebody who's just trying to get at us for some reason, they would have to like face the community, because like they would all have our back, so it'd just be like a wall of people shoving back at them. So like we never really had to worry too much about any kind of attacks or anything like that, which was nice. So
there wasn't really much toxicity at all in the community. It was as you described it, a big happy family.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, not much toxicity at all. Really, the only time we'd ever see that is when we went to other people's servers. We're like, whoa, it's crazy over here. Let's get out of here, But we would venture out sometimes. But most of the time, we had our own TF2 servers. And then we had close friends who we considered part of the Control Point family. We had a server in New Zealand and a couple of other servers that were just run by 4L people that we trust. Yeah. So
was this 4L? Does that name?
4L, right? Yes, 4L. Yeah, those guys were really cool. We met those guys at a convention. At that time, we started doing conventions. That way, that'd be kind of the way you'd meet us in person, and that not that we're like so special. We wanted people to meet us. We wanted to meet them too. Like we just wanted to. We're already partying all the time during the live streams, during actual TF2 play. We wanted to party in real life, so we started every year going to conventions, and then we started putting on our own convention called Control Point Party, CPP. Pay. And people could come to Huntsville, Alabama, and we hosted the whole thing here, and it just got bigger and bigger. So that was really cool.
That was CPCon 2009, mini CPCon a year later.
Yeah.
It's just it seems to me that you guys never really put yourselves on a pedestal in your own community at all. It wasn't always like, oh, these are the hosts, they are like kings or whatever. It always seemed like you guys were just as excited to be a part of the community as everyone else was excited to participate in it. And that was, while researching, that was extremely refreshing to see that, like a content creator and like groups of content creators didn't think of themselves as like above the people they were making stuff for.
Right. Yeah. We all kind of have the same mentality. We never really talked about it or tried not to act like a celebrity, but it's just our personality. If somebody starts to treat you bigger than they are, then it's just we would I don't know, I guess in our own way, just through maybe self-deprecating humor, just remind them that no, we're just some dudes like doing this stupid show, and you're the one listening to it, so
So,
yeah.
Do you have any fun stories to tell me from either the servers or the forums, or do you have anything that jumps in mind as like, oh yeah, that was really funny, I will never forget that?
Oh man, so many. Most of the little things I forget. I started listening to just random shows recently, and all of these little things kind of just came back. One of the things that I heard recently. It was an early episode in the 20s or so. We did a competition, I guess, with Gamers with Jobs. It was another podcast at the time, and I guess this one doesn't answer the question because it wasn't really funny. This was their community, or this was our community. The first time ever we'd seen this, our community was like disappointed with us because we were choosing our team, mates that were like popular in our community, and that was weird because we're like, whoa, like, for one thing, we're doing that because these are the people we play with the most. We know their style and we played together well, but that was the first time that we were like, oh yeah, I mean, we're trying to treat everybody equally, and we're not trying to play favorites and stuff like that, but that was kind of early on, and it was the only time it ever happened, and yeah, I don't know why I remembered that when you said, how about funny things? And I'm like, how about this dramatic thing that happened?
But I guess that's when you kind of realized how big Control Point became, especially for like a lot of people. How much like if people felt betrayed by you, that probably also meant that they like regarded you as like a part of their daily lives.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they, some of the kids, they even said they looked at us like their father, like dads. It's like, there were some like 13, 14-year-olds that were pretty cool. They're in the community, and they would contribute to the show in the form of like songs or just content, but they literally would call us dad and stuff. We're like, oh, that's a little weird, but that's how they saw us. They looked up to us, and and that's one of the reasons I really wanted to keep the family friendly vibe too in the show, and not keep it like too, I didn't ever want it like really dirty or gross or anything like that. But
why was the decision made to like have all swearing be like off limits?
I'm pretty sure that was probably my idea. And that's really the reason. I just saw these kids look up to us, and I thought, if I have any control over the upbringing of these fine people, it's maybe to set some sort of a good example and not just be terrible,
Especially probably for the time, like the gamer culture on the internet at the time was probably not the best.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it was already foul, and I guess this was like the one place you could go to and be reassured that it's not toxic and it's not foul, and it's and we heard time and time again that was one of the top 5 comments was, I love that your show is clean and your community, and it's like the safe place, right? I mean, nowadays it's the safe space is kind of a phrase, but not back then. It was just kind of a almost a very unique thing, right? I mean, it's a very unique offering to give people a clean gaming environment. And the parents enjoyed it too. They were appreciative because the parents would drive the kids over to see us.
Really?
In the studio. Yeah, they would drive us, and because they knew that we were clean and that we were not just toxic people, so they trusted us, and they liked it. And then we heard that parents were cool playing our show in the car on the way to school because they knew that it was clean, or mostly clean. Like there might be an innuendo here or there, but it wasn't. I would say probably PG-13 at best, Yeah, and some of the parents would be our age or maybe slightly older, and I'm like, wow, do you have a kid that's 15? That's crazy.
That must have been like surreal.
Yeah. I loved CP After Dark so much. So that was the time that we would get a little crazy, and usually the kids wouldn't be on with us, because we had TeamSpeak going or whatever it was at the time. And we'd be all talking and and most of us would be drinking. I would be drinking a bunch, and sometimes I don't even remember. They're like, "Dude, Eric went nuts last night." I'm like, "Really? I don't remember that." I get to drinking like some, I don't know, shots or something. I mean, we would just be like nuts at night. And some people would record it, and we're like, if you record it, let us, share it to us, but never like share it online, because we don't want CP After Dark to kind of, you know what I mean, taint the show. So a lot of people would record it because they're like, oh my God, this is hilarious. I can't wait until they see this tomorrow. That would be the thing, and then I'd watch it and I'm like, oh man. Most times it'd be like a demo. Remember, you could record demos, and then
they like save the voice chat as well.
Stuff like that. But
must have been scrubbed clean, because I could not find a single recording of CP After Dark at all.
Which is pretty cool. That shows the amount of respect they had for us, because I was like, please don't post this stuff online, because that's just terrible. And no one did. I mean, that's awesome.
Which sucks for me, someone who really wants to know.
Yeah. And most of the insane, crazy kind of memes, sayings and jokes kind of would spawn from those play sessions late at night, and it would carry over, to the show. And then we would start reciting this, or we would start, like saying these things. And then, so a lot of the crazy stuff that was on the show kind of stemmed from that. And I can't remember exactly what, maybe pay and maybe like rubber raw or something. I don't know, just weird words or,
I can imagine.
But yeah. Well, I remember the spy. The episode with the spy. What was his name?
In the discotheque.
The spy in the discotheque. Now, this was a guy.
Jennings.
Jennings, yes, Jennings. Jennings cracked us up. We always wanted to have him back, and for some reason, he came in, and then he just left. He just vanished. He was the weirdest guy who would just say Jennings all the time, and it's what a weird,
Yeah, you had him on the show as well. I seen the Jennings episode.
Yeah. What a strange. And I think we found that guy because we ventured off to another server, and so a few things would happen, like if we go to another server, because after we got our community weapons, people would be like, whoa, how'd you get that community flamethrower or whatever? And I'd be like, oh yeah, I do this show and blah, blah, blah. And then they'd either say, oh my God, really? Are you Eric? Oh, I love that show. Or they'd be like, oh, well, let's check it out, and they would come and check it out. Or we would go to another server and put a spray down, right, to kind of...
Great marketing ploy.
Right, and they would just see the spray. What is that? Oh, it's a show? Oh, I got to check that out. But other times we'd go to another server, we would hear the craziest, weirdest conversations or characters or whatever. We're like, we need to have this guy on our show. I think we found Jennings on probably another server. We're like, what a weirdo. He's awesome. Let's get him on the show. But most of the times that's why we would go to other servers, really, is just to find other players that may not even know about our community and kind of pull them in if they're interested, So that was...
Makes sense. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Especially with the sprays. I've heard your show where you say like people even complained about your sprays because they were everywhere.
Yeah, we did, because we made them available for everyone to download, and then we would constantly make new ones. We had a really good artist in our community named Boomrocker, and he would make people's avatars for the forums, and he would also make really cool sprays, but not just one or two spray. He'd have like, here's 15 versions of the spray. Choose your favorite one. And so it was just like, all right. So everybody had a spray, and everybody kind of could customize their control point spray. And then everybody's just spraying it everywhere, on everybody's server. So yeah, I'm sure that helped grow the numbers too. his forum name or his Steam name was I Drink Your Milkshake. And
Really, him?
yeah, he was a little kid, and he came up with all these parodies, all these songs. He sent in so many of them. In fact, episode 50 was so we put episode 50 on eBay, and we told everybody about it. We printed it out. We said we're only going to sell one copy of this. We're not going to have any downloads or anything. We printed it, and whoever gets it, and we'll all sign the cover of it. But we're never going to have it available any other way. So it just kept getting bid up, and he was the one who won. It was Drink Your Milkshake, and it was over $100, and he was a kid too. I couldn't believe it. I kind of didn't want to sell it to him. Like, oh, let's just give it to him. But he really loved it, and that was pretty cool.
He became a bit of a legend because like I've interviewed a lot of former regulars of Control Point, and almost all of them just mentioned him. It's like, oh, you need to talk to Milkshake. You need to talk to him.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Sadly, I couldn't get in touch with him. I tried. I found his Twitter and everything, but I don't think he's interested. I think he looks back on that with like cringe or something, because he was not willing to talk to me.
Okay, yeah.
A bit of a shame.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've kept up with him much, but I think you'll be delighted to hear that he is still a musician, still making music.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I liked his stuff. In fact, he was the one who inspired me to harmonize with myself in songs. Like, he would always harmonize with himself, and I'm like, oh, what a cool idea. And then I started doing that in my own songs. I'm like, and that came from him. But yeah, he was really cool. So Spencer had left the show, and then he came back, kinda, and it was kind of in and out. And around that time, it was late in the, in the series, and we had done 50 already, and I knew that we were gonna do it again for 100, but we weren't done with 50 until after like episode 69 or 70 or something. So it took us a while to do 50. Anyway, so we knew 100 was going to be a big blowout. And then we were just kind of like thinking, like, have we run out of stuff? Like, are we just sticking around because we want the attention or something, or because the original intent was to just have fun with it, right? And it became a somewhat informative show, but mostly entertainment, because most people would joke that a lot of our information would be wrong anyway, and we're like, who cares, whatever, you can look it up. We weren't really we didn't really care about accuracy that much, but we tried to be informative, but it seemed like there was nothing more to be informative about. We'd already kind of really covered everything. We even wanted to try to coin new phrases and stuff for the whole community. We wanted to see, how far our word would travel. Like, can we, give new phrases and words for different areas of big famous maps, and would it carry outside of our community? Sometimes it would, mostly it wouldn't. So really all of our weird little experiments were already done too. So there wasn't really a whole lot more to go towards, really. And we started seeing some of our regulars leave as well. Just people kind of just grow up and, move on. And I was like, it seems like instead of straining and trying to come up with something new for the show, why don't we just end the show and start something fresh right after that? Like, with no time. And that's what Nation of Gamers became, and that's what a lot of these other shows. We tried a whole ton of shows, and then eventually we landed on our new giant, which was the Minecraft podcast, which was even bigger than the Control Point by far. It was just a monster. But we were just kind of ready for that. We were ready for something new. The guys kind of stopped playing TF2 a lot too. I mean, me included. I'm not blaming them. I'm just saying we all kind of, fizzled out. We were all playing MMOs and whatever else came along. So I was like, okay, 100. Let's make this the blowout because we already know it's going to be epic because we're going to try to make it epic. So let's just, what if that's the message at the end? What if they don't even know it's coming until you literally listen to it and you hear the end? You're like, oh my God, are they quitting? I was like, that's the kind of cool, different, like shock. Maybe we didn't want to shock people, but that's the kind of experiments that we like to do. Like could we carry this out? Could we keep this secret until the last 5 minutes of this episode, and then everyone hears it together, and they're like, "Oh my God!" And that's exactly what we did. We're like, "Let's do it. Let's just do that." And if we ever feel like we need to come back to Control Point, we can, because why not? We all turned into gold statues or whatever at the end. What if we just thaw out? What if a freaking mage, a wizard comes along and turns us back? It doesn't matter. We kind of brought the show back again. I mean, we did. But it wasn't the same. And but we had a good time with 100, and we got some good feedback of people saying, you know what, that's a great way to go out. I commend you for not just fading out. Like at the time, pod fading was a phrase. I haven't heard that in 10 years, but pod fading was like, you start a podcast, you're excited for 10 episodes, and you start, instead of doing one every week, it becomes every month, and then it becomes every 6 months. We never wanted that. We wanted every single week put out a new show, and to show people that we care, that we're not just, doing this just to appease you peons. We're like, you guys are our friends, and we want to entertain you, So we were very much on schedule until 100, and then we just called it quits. And we didn't want to take anybody's input of people saying, oh, please don't end the show. We're like, we got to make up our minds and just stick to it. So, and that's what we did.
What was the reaction by the community? What was the after episode 100? What was the immediate reaction by everybody?
So when 100 was released, we had a CP Con simultaneously. So in fact, I believe it was days before 100 was released. We had CP Con, and people came in, and we told everybody that you're going to be able to hear 100 before everybody else, because we're all going to sit in a room and we're just going to play it on the loudspeakers, and we're all just going to sit and laugh and just enjoy it. And everybody's like, yes, that's what I want to do. And it was so weird now thinking we all just sat around listening to an audio podcast with nothing to look at. But time flew, and everybody really loved it. I mean, anyway, that's what we did. And then at the end, people were tearing up because they didn't know. We didn't tell anybody. So we literally got to see the looks on their faces. And it was just like, made me tear up just looking at them. I'm like, this is what's happening. Yeah. It was like, yep, this is what's happening. They're like, I can't believe it. Like, I literally can't believe it. And I'm like, I can't either, but this is what's happening, And so, and then, but they said, you know what? You're still our friend. We'll still hang out. We'll still play together. And it doesn't matter that, it's not going to affect our friendship or anything like that. And everybody thought that was a cool way to go out. Online was basically the same reaction. A lot of people sad. Some people begging us, hey, that can't be the last one. Please continue. And we just kind of have to ignore those and say, well, this is the decision we made. We're not going back on it. But overall, yeah, it was received well. Yeah.
So how would you'll have to forgive me, but I've not had the time to listen to it. But how was Nation of Gamers? Because from what I can tell, it ended after like 30-ish episodes. Well, why did that fizzle out so quickly? Because from what I've seen, you guys wanted to do Nation of Gamers because you didn't want to be quote unquote, bound by TF2. You wanted to talk about gaming a lot more, like talk about any and every video game you were playing. So why did it fizzle out much quicker than Control Point did?
So Nation of Gamers was a a potpourri of topics. We could talk about any game we wanted to without anybody going, "Hey, stop talking about Conan and talk about TF2." Because it became a meme that we would start talking about something like Skyrim would just come out and we can't stop talking about it. We're like, "Oh, that's right, we're doing a TF2 podcast," and so that really helped us just say, "Oh my God, this is awesome. We can talk about everything we want to," and after. So I think what happened with that show is that since it wasn't a niche thing and there was already a million, IGN had like 1,000 podcasts, I think, at the time, but there was so many multi-game variety type podcasts at the time. We were just lost in the sea. Our only listeners were just, CP, Control Point listeners and people that knew us and stuff like that. So, and even that was dwindling because they were really there for TF2. And then, so that went on for a while, week after week after week. And then I tried a different one called The Daily Gamer, where I would put out an episode every single day. So I would batch record these. Sometimes I'd record 5 at a time, or I'd record one in the morning and edit it and put it out in the afternoon. But I did The Daily Gamer for, probably too many episodes. 60, 70 episodes, a lot. And that was every day, too. That was insane. Except I think I skipped Sundays or something like that because I had to take a break. And then we also had another one that was the Left 4 Dead podcast. And then we had a Warhammer 40K podcast. We had so many after Control Point that, Nation of Gamers was kind of our weekly, we're going to do this one no matter what, but we started doing all these other ones. Oh, and Wes did one called Core Elements. And his focus, his was cool because his focused on interviews with other game developers in the industry, which was really cool. So he always had to book a guest for his shows. Anyway, we had so many that I think it was just too much on our lives to keep up with. We were stirring the pot. It was just too much in the pot at once, and we burned out. And I think we just needed a break. We needed to focus on another niche that really got us going, something really exciting, like TF2, and nobody really cared that much about all these broad topic ones. And I think at the point when we realized that, we're like, yeah, okay, let's regroup, guys. Let's regroup. Let's turn them all off and let's just regroup. And that's what we did.
I've seen from Brent that Valve was actually very sad about your episode 100 departure, that they sent you all a personal letter and some goodies.
They did. They were so awesome. We're like, oh my God, you were listening this whole time? Well, that was the ongoing joke. We always wanted to get Doug Lombardi's interview and never could. But they did put us in their blog once or twice, which blew us away. We're like, oh my God, TF2 knows about us. But then when they sent us the farewell goodbye at the 100, that was just really, really cool. That sealed it really for us. We're like, okay, now I feel as though it's really over and all that time was really worth it, because man, they sent us a box, so many. I mean, it was like thousands of postcards and T-shirts and little plush dolls, keychains, posters, so many posters, all signed by everybody in the entire TF2 division.
Wow.
I mean, they really, and a nice hand. The letter was so funny too. I wish I still had it, but it was you
don't have yours?
No, I think.
What happened?
I don't know. I'm not real sure. I moved many times between now and then. I think Brent probably kept more stuff than I did. I'm sure.
You haven't kept the signed posters either.
I did keep some TF2 posters though. I don't think I still have them up, but I have them rolled up. But I think I gave we all gave the signed ones to Brent, so he probably still has them on his wall, maybe.
So what made you ultimately want to come back? Like, was there like a moment that you remember that was like, okay, we need to do CP again?
Um, I think I think it might have been Brent's idea, really, to kind of to come back. I think we just wanted we might have tried so many things and kind of wanted to revisit and just get those moments back or something and I remember kind of pushing back a little bit and just saying we should just let it go with 100. I mean, if we continue it, won't we kind of have to go out again epically? And it'll feel weird, and I guess we just was like, screw it, let's just go back. But I think we ended on 123 maybe.
120, 23, yeah.
So we didn't do really that many, and then I don't think I really stayed around all the way to the end of that little stint. um, but
I assume you weren't much of a fan of the second return, the return. I mean,
yeah, because it didn't have that same, like, I think it was more about us getting together and doing something, a project, having fun together, and less about the actual content, less about the actual game itself.
right.
And that's where I was like, oh man, it has to be about, we have to have excitement about the content or else the show will never work. Like, people can see through it. None of us want to be fake. Like, we want to find something that's fun and just tell everybody about it, about how much we love this thing, whatever it is. So for years, we're like, what should we do a show about? Hey, I played this game. I think this is pretty cool. And we're like, man, maybe, I don't know. And it's like, oh, what about this one? I don't know. We just didn't ever get it until Minecraft came out. And just, I know this isn't about Minecraft, but we started the Minecraft podcast as a complete troll, just like Control Point.
Just like Control Point.
Oh yeah, it was even more trolly because the game was in alpha. There weren't even any bad guys. The creeper wasn't even in the game. It was a Java app on somebody's website, and all you could do is walk around and jump and put blocks down. That's it. There wasn't any like tools. There weren't like a shovel or anything. I mean, there wasn't anything. It was just, and I was like, we should do a podcast about this dumb thing. What is this weird game that we found? It's like not even a game. It's just a thing. And we're like, yeah, let's do it. We literally did episode 1 on this thing that was just. I mean,
and called it the Shaft as well. Like,
yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, we called it the Shaft because we're like, it's stupid. We'll just do a couple episodes, or maybe we'll just do one. And it'll be funny. But yeah, anyway, so that's what got us going. We were excited. We thought it was funny and stupid at the same time, and people flocked to it like way faster than Control Point. And we're like, dude, I think we got something here. So
it was a right place, right time type of thing.
Yeah, and that's when we decided we're not ever going back to Control Point because here's this new thing, and this is going to take us years before we get tired of this. And it did. It took years, So,
but yeah, I mean, I cover the Shaft very briefly in my video. It is way out of my scope. You guys do so much stuff I could not keep up. It was way out of my scope, but yeah. I found out a lot of cool stuff, like how you were basically at the forefront, one of the first ever people to do like a Minecraft song parody on YouTube with like a music video. And that was like Found a Diamond, and there was also We Built This Town. And that you were definitely a trailblazer within the Minecraft community as well. And I saw that We Built This Town. The song had she was called like Minecraft Girl or something back then, but she now hosts like the Minecraft Lives. She's actually an employee for Mojang.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, we were there at the very beginning and saw it all get laid out, and get assembled. Because yeah, we were her friend, and we all went to uh, L.A. because they hired us to be Minecraft spokespeople at the Sony booth. Um,
I did not know that.
and,
That's awesome.
and Minecraft chick came too, and we were all in the booth, and then they hired her. They were talking to her, asking her about her job and stuff, and we're like, "Oh, dude, are you gonna work at Mojang? You think they're gonna hire you?" And then they pulled her away. They're like, "Hey, let's talk at lunch about some stuff." And we're like, "Oh my god!" So I mean, we were literally there for everything. Um, met Notch and Captain Sparkles. He went on to do some really big music videos and stuff, and he got inspired from mine because I was kind of the first one.
Didn't he cite you as an inspiration?
Yeah. So, but yeah, that was
That's awesome.
yeah, that was good times.
A bit on the shaft. Okay, I need to. This might cut too deep, but which one in your mind was more fun, the peak of Control Point or the peak of Shaft?
Oh boy, that's a tough one because at the peak of Control Point, I had we had never been in a community online before. This was kind of our first like I had been part of a community before, certainly, because I've been on the internet for since the 90s, and it's usually just like forums and stuff, and I'm part of this community and they know my name, and that's great. But to be kind of a community leader, to kind of shape the activities that a community is imparted with, that was completely new. And at times I felt like a celebrity, but most times I would fight it, and I'm like, no, I'm not a celebrity. I'm someone just leading this group of people that want to have a good time, and it was just so different, and I was just living with it every day, thinking, man, this is the best thing, but also really weird. Like I could literally go into Team Fortress 2, and then people just be flocking around me, like, oh my god, look, he's logged in, and everybody's running up to me, and I'm like, that's just weird. Like, why is this happening? So at the peak of Control Point was different, because by the time we did the Shaft, it was more of like, we've learned a lot of lessons. We know how to stop drama, and to do this or that, or to how to really handle ourselves. But we can enjoy it a lot better with the Shaft because we'd already done it, and now we can just enjoy the good parts. Control Point was a bit hectic at times. There was a little drama behind the scenes, but it was more like scheduling or like getting things out on time. It was like finding our rhythm. So the Shaft was more laid back, and oh yeah, we got this. We did this for years. We already know what to do. But Control Point was figuring it out. So yeah, the two were different. But so when I look back on Control Point, it's like, why did we put so much work into that? Because we were not getting any money. Like at the time, like you couldn't monetize anything. I mean, if anything, we could pay for our hosting, and we could pay for a couple of things through sponsorships, which we would just charge people $10 to have your message read at the beginning of the show. And we didn't know if anybody would think that was cool, or if they thought we were like trying to be money grabbers or something. And we're like, no, this is literally just to pay for we had a TeamSpeak server. We had a couple of TF2 servers. We had a website, all that costs money. We're like, maybe we can just pay. Maybe Control Point can pay for itself. That was the idea. And it did.
Right.
It paid for itself, nothing more. And we were happy with it. When the Shaft came around, we were actually making money to live on and stuff like that. So that was completely different,
Right. So I guess it's not really fair to compare the two.
Yeah. Two different eras, really. I'd say probably Control Point was kind of more tight knit, kind of more family, because when you play TF2, there's only so many people, playing, right? I mean, maybe a 12 max server, maybe a 24 if you're crazy.
24, yeah.
Yeah. Or I guess was it 20? Man, it's been so long I can't remember. Um,
Yeah, I know for a fact that you guys ran 12v12, so
yeah.
24 people.
Yeah, okay, yeah, 12v12. And that it's more cozy that way. On the forums and also in the chat room we would see the same people. Um, and those same people also would contribute to the podcast. So you would hear stories about a certain person, and then you would hear that certain person, you would hear his voice on the show and all that. But when the Shaft came around, it was so much bigger, and there's not really a limit, to how many people can fit on a Minecraft server. I mean, there is, but it's large. And there was just so many people, and there was so many regulars. I mean, we had tons of friends and stuff. So yeah, Control Point was just more, tight knit, kind of cozy, like, just kind of easier to manage, I think. Control Point was just a whirlwind of learning and having fun. It was, it taught us how to properly lead, by good example, but also how to work together with my best friends, because I was working with my best friends. It's like we created a job for ourselves. We're doing this every single week, and on Monday this happens, and on Wednesday this is the release, and this day is our edit day. It was like we just created this job. So and in a way, that carries on to our real life, our work ethic, and and how we live and grow in the real world. So, Control Point really kind of taught us a lot, and gave us a lot of real world skills, but it was also, an awesome party. It was just fun all the time. But, mostly we would hit record, and time would just go by so fast, because we're just, we're going through the content because we have, bullet points in our document. Oh yeah, we're going to talk about this and this and that and this and that, but nothing was scripted, obviously. And it was just like, wow, I can't believe an hour is already gone. I mean, wow, we just started, didn't we? And then I would play it back and listen back. I wouldn't listen to every single show again, because normally I'm working on the next one. But when I did listen to a show, I was like, wow, we really jived well. Like, the chemistry is really great between all us four. It's like I didn't realize it until I had to play it back and listen. I'm like, wow, wow, Wes was really on that with that punchline, and wow, Brent was hilarious when he said that one thing. I'm like, wow, I can't believe we had that conversation. That's so fun, because people don't talk like that in real life. I mean, I guess you do, but only short, like maybe for 5 minutes. But but this is for an hour. We're just cutting up, and and we're not trying to overly try to be funny, or we don't have any kind of agenda or anything. We're just blabbering, and it just worked so well. It's just, looking back, I'm like, wow, that's why people listen to us, I guess. Just 4 dudes, best friends, just good chemistry. We're laid back. We're not trying to be anything that we're not, so I guess, the audience saw that and was like, I can relate to that. I gotta say, I probably have more money than I had back then. Not that I'm rich, but I just remember kind of struggling back when we were doing the Shaft and doing, or at the end of Control Point, but I was younger then. So, in fact, maybe I was in my late 20s. Was I? Dang, I can't remember. Actually, let me break out the calculator. Because now I gotta know. Oh, okay.
Or,
So we started the
or
show in 2007. I was 31, and now I'm 47. So I guess we ended the show when I was probably 33, maybe. Because we did about 50 episodes a year. Yeah, right? Isn't that right? Yeah, 52
yeah,
weeks in a year. So yeah, we only skipped a handful of weeks. One of them because there was a tornado. There was lots of tornadoes and my power went out. We had to skip that week. uh, but but yeah, nowadays I guess um, it's not a whole lot different in the sense of community online and kind of leading a community because I'm still at it. I have a YouTube channel with my best friend since childhood. His name is Daryl, and our YouTube channel is Eric and Daryl. And I have another YouTube button plaque, on my wall because of it. And it's my latest venture, and we have a community, and we've thrown these events where people can come and hang out with us, completely inspired by Control Point, the CP cons and stuff like that. And I was literally thinking we should have a CP con, but for Eric and Daryl for the YouTube channel, because that's people come to that. Like I wouldn't have thought that before, but that's how communities stay together, So in a way so like I'm not playing video games with my community. I'm live streaming and showing them videos. So it is different. The interactivity is different. I loved interacting with community back then, logging into a game and sitting with them for hours playing games with them. So I don't get that really anymore. So that's probably the biggest difference in my life is I'm not playing games with my communities anymore.
well, I mean, life marches on and all of that, but and I know it's all behind you now, but have you ever like throughout all these like 10 years now ever thought like, man, what's going on with Team Fortress 2? I should get back into that, or what's going on with CP, or I should, get Brent on, get it going again. Has that ever crossed your mind, or is it too late?
Um, yeah. Every now and then I kind of get the itch to revisit something. So not too long ago, I tried to log back into Minecraft, and because I didn't migrate my username,
Oh
I guess,
no.
from one service to another, and suddenly there was some deadline, I guess, that I missed. My account just doesn't exist anymore, and I was like, well, okay, I guess I'm done with Minecraft forever. Even though people keep offering me thousands of dollars for my account because I have some rare capes, but I'm like, I guess it got deleted, whatever. But
Oh no.
Control Point. With Team Fortress 2, I still have my Steam account. Certainly, I can log right back in, and I still have my community weapon. So, I'm highly more likely to play Team Fortress 2 than really any of these other games that I was a part of. So, but yeah, I've been curious about it, and I will grab Brent and Wes and maybe Spencer if he still wants to play. And and I know that no one's going to recognize us, and it's not because I want to go in there being famous. It's just let's just see what our 40-year-old selves would be like playing this game again. That's the idea.
Hi, my name is Wes Wilson. I am one of the members of the former Dead Workers Party podcast group. I did Control Point, The Shaft, and a bunch of other podcasts that live in certain people's memory fondly.
Awesome. So can you give me your like sort of retelling of how Control Point began? Because I've heard two separate versions so far. They've been very different.
Ooh, that is so the thing is that memory is a funny thing. Here's what I remember.
Right.
I remember that I was doing the World of WoW podcast with Brent and Eric, which was focusing on machinima or you know, like the making animations in game for stuff. And we were doing kind of this machinima podcast, and then Team Fortress 2 was coming out. And I think I remember it was Brent's idea, because Brent was a huge TF1 fan. And I remember it fondly as well. And so I was like, sure, let's do it. That sounds like a great idea. We'll get involved, you know, right at the beginning. And so we made plans to start a podcast once it was out. And it was audio only for the most part. We were just trying to see what we could do. And suddenly we were having a lot of fun doing it. And it was a really positive experience. It got the four of us to hang out together every week, and it was a good time.
That's awesome. And like I've heard from everywhere that you and Brent were the biggest forces behind that, because Eric didn't really care about Team Fortress 2 even when it came out. And I don't know much about Spencer in general, but
Yeah.
but it seemed that you and Brent had this sort of shared love for Team Fortress Quake, like the Quake mod. And
Yeah, well, yeah, I remember playing it mostly because we had a couple of mutual friends who owned a computer, like a LAN party computer place
right.
where you could go and play video games on a LAN. And that was pretty rare at that point in time. And so I remember playing there a little bit. And we had some mutual friends. I was way more into TF2 than I was into TF1.
Right.
I knew it. I remember liking it, but I was most excited because I knew Valve was a good company, and the stuff that I saw leading into the game was really smart and cool. And so I was all about it. I'm like, okay, let's try this. Will be great. And I was excited to get into a new shooter. And I mean, my main motivation for most of my life has been to find things that I can do with my friends, and we can do it together. You'll notice that when I'm streaming or making YouTube videos the most, it's because I've found a thing that I can do with my friends. It's seldom that I just want to do that thing on my own. And the fact that we got to do this together is part of the reason why I was a huge fan of it.
Okay, awesome. So it's from my understanding that even really early on, after a couple episodes, you guys started fostering this sort of sense of community with your listeners, which hasn't really been seen much before that point. Whereas people who listen to your show could join you on the servers, play Team Fortress 2 with you, join you on the forums, discuss with you directly, and send you listener contributions to be played on the show. So how would you say, how would you recount, like, or share me your thoughts on the community you fostered during that time?
The community was unbelievable. Like that was one of the best parts. And I still have friends from that community to this day. There are people I talk to regularly who I met because they were part of the Control Point community. What was great was that we sort of got to create this weird little niche kind of take on Team Fortress 2, and everyone else got to enjoy that part and then participate in the community together, so they got to feel side by side with us. Because literally, we would play Team Fortress 2 4 or 5 nights a week for hours on end till the wee hours of the night, and it never got boring. We would sit there and play, oh God, some of the dumbest maps. Oh Lord, they were dumb. And just have the best time doing it. And it was great because we got to tap into a lot of people's passion for the game and have them sort of stand side by side with us while we took our passion towards creating, content, I guess is the way you put it nowadays.
Right.
And so we all fit into this piece of this community, where people would send us weird little audio clips of them just being weird, and we would take it and run with it, and then people would hear those and do things on top of that, and people in the community would end up building things on top of things other people did, and it was really unique and special.
Right, and it's kind of it kind of comes with the territory of Team Fortress 2, where like you guys did the Shaft later, but the difference between a Minecraft server and a TF2 server is a TF2 server has only so many slots. Like you can there's only 24 people in there, and you're bound to start interacting with people and brushing up with them. So would you say that when you played, there was a sort of sense of like, oh, I'm booting up TF2. I really hope this person is online, or I really hope I get to kill that guy again, or something like that.
I actually didn't experience that very much. I really liked the people cycling through. Right. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like I said, I am still friends with some of these people to this day. And they're important to me, but it was rare for me to have favorites. I definitely had people I didn't like to play with. There were the spies. Spies basically is what it boils down to. All the spy players infuriated me to no end. And so I'd be like, oh no, so-and-so's on. I hope they're not going to play spy tonight. But yeah, no, I mean, obviously, certain people are going to be a little funnier than others, but I didn't have a sense of favoritism within the community or like anybody I was looking forward to killing.
Right.
I did look forward to like new weird scenarios being created, new odd dynamics within certain maps, because that was another thing that was a lot of fun, was people would experiment, because we were all usually playing with similar groups of people. If you wanted to sneak something up on somebody, you had to come up with some new tactics.
Right.
And that's a lot of what was fascinating, is that people would come up with something new and you'd go, wait, how did they do that? And that was a lot of fun.
So I suppose for you, it was less about the exact people you were playing with and more about the place you played it in, like, the CP servers.
It really was. I really enjoyed just the general camaraderie and dynamics of how it works. And this kind of stuff has actually continued with me. I still enjoy squad-based games better than anything else. I loved Overwatch when it came out. I did a ton of Overwatch. I'm so deep in Helldivers right now, it's ridiculous. And that entire like phenomenon of having a team and moving out together against an opposing force still resonates with me to this day.
So I guess there's a lot of, even nowadays in the TF2 community, there's a lot of debate around how much is TF2 like individualistic play, where you just play to get kills and by yourself and whatever, and how much of it is team play. So how about for you when you played TF2? How much was it team play versus individual play?
So it depended on who I was playing with, because when you run out the door, it's individual play. And then you start seeing ebbs and flows in the way players are playing. And as you get experienced with the game, you're like, okay, well, they're kind of doing this sort of thing. I can go here and help them with that and do this and that and this and that. So I think that when you come out the gate, it's individualistic, but once you start learning how your teammates are functioning, it kind of clicks in place. We would sometimes orient under a leader, but it was very rare. people would be like, hey, I'm doing this thing over here. And then someone would go, ooh, I'll do this here then. And like the team play would build on certain individualistic actions.
Right. Right. And that makes sense. And I imagine that was all thrown out the window when it came to After Dark.
After Dark was just madness. Like I I was only 50% in for it. Like, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed a lot of the stupid stuff that we did. But at the same time, like, some of the maps were so dumb, just so incredibly dumb that I sometimes would get kind of angry and be like, I don't want to be doing it. Can we do something that's a little more normal, please? Which is funny because I'm not a normal person.
You would complain about Cyberpunk Spy in the Discotheque.
I hated those maps, and I'd play them. I mean, again, like I could do them in limited doses,
right?
But they were not. There was this one type of there was this one gamer that I used to play with, and he said the best games are multiplayer, number one, like you're playing head to head against another person. Number two, they're easy to pick up. And number three, they're infinitely complex, so that as you can pick it up easily, but there's still lots of places to go and lots of places to learn. And the problem with Cyberpunk and all that is just that it was just random stuff. There, the learning curve got real flat real quick.
It's like a kill box.
But bourbon helps. Bourbon helps.
I know that one of the maps you really hated, which really stood out to me, was one called like Duel or DM Duel or something, which was just a box where like there would be two doors and then you'd come out and it's just a box you killed each other in. And I found that so funny because you were like, I hate this, but I started playing TF2 when I was about 9 years old, and that was my like childhood. That map, that box was like, I think I've spent like way too much time after school in that particular box.
Well, I also was a big fan of the aesthetic. I liked feeling like I was in the kind of TF2 world. Right. I wanted maps that looked kind of like the TF2 world, or mimic something else. Like I remember liking the Mario Brothers map a little bit, right. and some other things. Like, I mean, jaunts into the other environments was good, but the characters were designed with a certain aesthetic that I liked. And it's still part of the appeal to me is that these characters were so well animated and designed in such a way that you could tell what a character was just by glancing their way.
Right.
That was one of the early Valve videos, was them saying, we want people to be able to identify the characters via the silhouette.
Right.
And I loved that. And so like, there was another one. I can't remember which one it was, but it basically was just gray and orange. That was the only thing it was. And I'm like, everything running in a gray and orange environment is going to instantly stand out. And I mainly played Medic and Demo Man.
Right.
And both of those are not good at long range. So I did not want to be seen immediately. I wanted corners to hide behind. I wanted environments that would allow me to, blend in or look like I belonged there. And a lot of these, cheesy After Dark maps were just kill boxes.
I think I know which one you're talking about. I think it was called CP Orange. It had like a big orange tower in the middle.
I think it was. Yeah.
You're right. That's also a childhood favorite of mine. So you're really. So I assume you're not retracting those statements.
I am here to destroy your childhood and everything it stands for.
CP Orange. That was originally a Day of Defeat map, and then it got translated into TF2, and now it's one of the most popular TF2 custom maps.
Interesting.
And no one knows who made it. I watched the video on that. No one knows who made that.
That's kind of fascinating.
Uh, so while we're at funny things happening, why don't you tell me if you have any stories that come to mind? Well, let's start with in game. Do you have anything that comes to mind? It's like, I remember when we did that, and that was a lot of fun.
I it's tough. A lot of that stuff has faded. I know it's hard to tell, but I'm a little old.
Right.
And a lot of that stuff has kind of faded into the memory of things. I just have memories of good times. I actually love when people uncover old videos of us playing because I don't remember it. And back then when we streamed Control Point, we were streaming it on Ustream. And like game capture and all that was still in early stages. So it was there's not much left of all that. And it's kind of sad. I don't have a lot of memories. I remember a lot of concepts that are mostly just followed up by things we ran with. Like, the whole push the cart song, reminds me of how much frustration we had getting people to stand by the cart.
Right.
And but like individual memories, it's mostly just positive emotions at this point in time.
Yeah, that's what you want, really.
Yeah.
Uh,
I don't have memory of a single like there's I can't bring to mind a single time that I did not enjoy playing TF2.
oh, well, now we're stretching it.
Now I pointed out I don't remember, right? Like I said, obviously I hated spies, and I'm sure there were nights where I completely rage quit because I got backstabbed way too many times. But for the most part, like it's that entire experience was a positive thing.
Right, and that's great. And I mean, when you talk about Spy, it's funny. You talked a lot about on the podcast how you hated Spy and Sniper. Sniper
Mm-hmm.
was also one you really hated, and I think you'll be delighted to know that even nowadays, people's opinions have completely flipped on Sniper. Some people think he should be completely removed from the game, which is something you've been yelling about like 15 years earlier.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, what I didn't like about Sniper was that it basically made certain zones of the map like unusable. You
Right.
had to like you unless if you were up against a good sniper, there were certain areas you just couldn't go
Right.
unless you did something weird. And I'm not saying that, like, I love playing sniper in certain games. It's some of my favorite gameplay in certain experiences, but definitely in in TF2, I found sniper to trouble the design of maps.
Right.
And especially in things like, if I remember, Orange had huge open zones.
Yeah.
And so a
Just the
sniper in
field.
something like Orange was just like, that's one of the reasons why I didn't like those maps, you know? And so, it's not that I don't think sniper gameplay is fun. It's just that I think that it makes it so that so many other characters can't play the game. Excuse me.
No worries.
I think it makes it so that so many characters can't play the game the way that they would like.
It's so much worse now because, the game is now like 17 years old. So you have people who've been like honing their sniper skills for a decade in just TF2. And
Yeah.
when that kind of guy joins your game, it's over. There's no more fun to be had for you.
Yeah. Well, and I also imagine there's a lot better bots than there used to be. I know TF2 had a big bot problem for a while, and
No,
I'm
it
sure
still does.
I'm
Yeah.
sure that the sniper bots are crazy now. Like, they're just probably so good.
Yeah, no, there's a big movement happening. Actually, today is the day. Yeah, there was this is unrelated to Control Point, but there's a movement happening right now called #FixTF2, and they're running this petition to Valve, and I think they have over 100,000 signatures right now for them to fix the cheating issue. So that's still an issue we're grappling with, but it's not as bad as it was a couple years ago. I think
Right.
but no thanks to Valve. It was just because the bot hosters, some of them ran out of money, so there's less of them now.
Yeah. Well, you know, and like I assume a lot of it. How's the hat market doing?
Oh,
Is
that's
it still profitable to
well,
have bots on servers and sell the hats that they get?
well, now it's all like automated through like trade bots that don't go into the game. They are on Steam, right?
Yeah.
So nowadays there's services like there's one called marketplace.tf where you just swipe your PayPal or card and then a bot just sends you a trade request to give you all the items you paid for. So
Yeah.
there's not really as much of a trading scene now where you're like, hey, if you want these two weapons, can you give me a hat? That doesn't really happen anymore. You just kind of like, I'll pay for it. Fucking hat. Except
After you first contacted me, I did go in and play some TF2 again.
Ooh, what'd you think?
And I was demolished pretty heavily. I went in, but I was a little surprised. I still think my community weapon is not as noticeable as it needs to be, because like nobody even communicated that I had this little sparkly grenade launcher.
Well, it is like a little unnoticeable, and also like people that Valve hasn't given those out in like 13 years, so I don't think people even know what they are anymore.
That's a good point.
They have not given those out in a very long time, so I don't think people even know that's supposed to be rare. With Now I've lost my train of thought. We went on a tangent.
Tangent.
Well, I'm used to it. I listen to a show.
It's funny though. One thing that I did learn, one thing that I loved about podcasting with Brent and Eric is that, and Spencer for the most part as well. Like Spencer and I continued doing some podcasts even after I left the Dead Workers Party. But like we really honed our ability to file funny things in our heads and then pull them back out later in a way that was constructive for an interview style environment. And I still use the tools that I learned between waiting tables and podcasting. I feel like I can walk up on a stage with any person and interview them competently in an entertaining way.
You guys have definitely improved over time. Like when you compare the first episode of Control Point to the hundreds, it's like night and day.
Yeah. Well, and we had a lot to learn, and a lot of that came in troublesome ways. We started off doing scripts for our, like really trying to focus. We would sit down and talk about the episodes we were about to do. And we tried to take lead. We tried to rotate who had lead on certain things. And then like one day we came to an episode, I think it was number 9 or something like that of Control Point. And I was trying to be all professional,
right.
And I actually got mad because things kind of went off the rails, and I got mad about it, and I was wrong. I was wrong to get mad about it, and I apologized to everyone. But it was it took a while to hone those skills and really get to where, we could do stuff in a constructive way.
Right.
Like I said, we tried to have it real regimented at the beginning. We're going to cover this beat. We're going to cover this beat. We're going to cover this beat. And we really learned over the years how to just have some major markers and file things in our heads while we were doing it. You'll sometimes see me in podcast typing. I'll write notes into what we're doing about something I want to talk about later because we're talking about it now and I don't want to distract from that conversation.
Right.
It was an excellent environment for learning how to do and we were uniquely good at it. I can't listen to most freeform podcasts. They bother me terribly. And it's a lot of the stuff that we used to do. It's just that a lot of people don't know how to let go of the mic. They keep talking when other people are talking. They try to talk over each other too often. They're not giving people the time to solidify their joke, you know? And I learned a lot of that with Brent, Eric, and Spencer, and am better for it.
I imagine when you're listening to a lot of freeform podcasts, you're like seeing parts of yourself that you had to iron out, and you're like, oh, I can't listen to this.
Yes. As a matter of fact, there are no like open discussion podcasts that I listen to anymore. I only listen to like planned, edited, structured stories.
Right.
You know, things like Decoder Ring, things like 99% Invisible, things like Imaginary Worlds, where there's a script,
right,
and it plays out. The ones where people are just sitting around babbling, I get way too frustrated with, and I'm like, I can't. And it's one of the reasons why I've kind of put down podcasting, because I feel like I was very good at that, and we had a good audience for it, but that particular genre annoys me, and so I kind of don't want to contribute to the problem by making more of it.
But you're so good at it. Come on. I mean, it's like with a lot of Control Point, there were a lot of critiques within the wider TF2 community. People who weren't in the Control Point circle that's like, these guys talk about their lives too much. I don't care what Wes was up to this week. I want to hear about Team Fortress 2. But I feel like that made the show a lot better, because at least while I was listening to it, before I even planned on making any sort of documentary for it, I looked forward to hearing what you guys were up to and how that sort of went into the TF2 content. Like, it really gave you a sense that you knew a person, but not in an antisocial kind of way. It's like, me and Wes are buddies. It's like, no, I know the kind of person that Wes is, and that helps me appreciate when he says that Sniper sucks. And
right.
So I wanted to ask you your thoughts on that. Did you think that you guys went too deep into like personal stuff to where it like alienated an audience, or was it a positive?
Well, I think I've just described, how I don't like that kind of content anymore myself,
Right.
But at the same time, like, here's where I think that type of content is particularly poignant. I am still contacted to this day by people who said, I had a really, I was in rough times, and hearing you guys laugh together, hearing you guys talk together made all the difference in the world to me. And I still, my YouTube views are double digit. I'm not making videos because I'm going to have a huge audience, because I think I'm going to be a star. But there's somebody out there who needs to see good people having fun in constructive ways and enjoying each other. And we enjoyed each other so much while we were podcasting. We had so much fun doing it that we just kept adding more podcasts because we wanted more of that. But a lot of it was based on the fact that we were really good friends. And that kind of friendship, I felt, was good to have on display. And I think it was a positive message for a lot of people who, I think a lot of people don't necessarily have good examples of friendship. And I feel that was a good example of it, that we could enjoy each other week after week, murder each other every single night of the week, do things that infuriated the other person, and still laugh and like each other. I mean, I think I recognize that there were a lot of people who were alienated by the content that we built, but there were also a lot of people who turned to us because they didn't have what we had. And it was a way for them to share in the experience of our friendship. And it's a little parasocial, but I don't think that's a bad parasocial relationship. I think that seeing good relationships is healthy, and I feel like we provided that.
So I guess you could sum it up to for every person that was turned away by all the personal stuff, there's a person who that kind of stuff meant a lot to.
Yeah.
That sort of outweighed that guy who left because you guys weren't talking about TF2 enough.
Right. Right. And I mean, again, we got it. We knew it. We talked about it with all the Age of Conan stuff. Like, we knew that there were people who were very frustrated by our podcast because we couldn't talk, because there really wasn't that. We shot people this week. I built a new century. Hey, there's a new guy. Like, there's a finite amount of stuff that you can do there.
Right.
And so we just did what we could do because we were having fun doing it. And you know, I get why people didn't like it, but at the same time, I didn't see a whole lot of people rising to the occasion to make the content that they wanted. We
Right.
made what we wanted. They could have made what they wanted, and they didn't. Oh, she needs some love. Is nobody upstairs? My wife and my youngest are out of town right now, so all I've got is my oldest two. So they're probably in their rooms listening to
Their dad's podcast.
no, my cat. So I thought that I was gonna be the coolest dad in the whole wide world because I have board games and role-playing games, and I own thousands of games on Steam, and you know, my kids have zero interest in anything that I'm a part of. They like my kids barely play board games with me, except for my youngest. They each have like one or two games that they're interested in playing. My kids wouldn't let me teach them to swim. They wouldn't let me teach them to ride a bike. My oldest doesn't want to drive a car, so I can't really teach him how to drive a car. What? Stop. And so it's so funny because, you know, like my oldest two aren't huge. Like, they don't like Star Wars or Marvel movies or any, like, and I'm just like, what? Why won't my kids watch Marvel movies with me? It blows me away.
They're
Okay,
like,
you need to get down.
They're like the chocolate ice cream of movies. Like,
Yeah. Well, and when I was a kid, you know, like, all I wanted to do was see crazy things, you know, blow ups and superheroes and all that kind of stuff. And my kids were like, So it's weird.
I guess I want to touch on the Christmas album now.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I see from what I've gathered, there were Christmas episodes where it was like, oh, the hosts are out of town, but here's the songs, and then you compiled those songs from those Christmas episodes into a full-on album. And
so there was primarily just the one Christmas episode, if I remember correctly. We tried doing, I think we did a second year's worth of stuff, but none of those songs were as popular as the first year.
right.
We felt very inspired during the first year. And it primarily came, you know, the Dead Workers Party was a film production studio. And so there was a lot of thought process there behind, you know, music and videos and all that kind of stuff. And when the idea first came up, we were all just like, yeah, this is a great idea. I think it was Eric that came up with the idea of doing the first Christmas special. And I remember us sitting in the front room of Eric's house, you know, brainstorming a couple of ideas. You know, Jingle Bells is Burning is just something that just came up, you know, while we're sitting there laughing.
It's just Spencer singing to a cup.
Yes. the dumbest thing, but it was hilarious. Like there's like, even to this day, I can go back and listen to those songs and enjoy them because they're so dumb, and yet like we put some good thoughts into the way those things went. But yeah, the Christmas specials are still the highlights. Well, that and the plays, the radio plays.
Right. And did you expect them to get as big as they did? Because they sort of transcended the Control Point podcast. Like, especially, it's beginning to look a lot like Dust Bowl and Jingle Bells Are Burning. Those went viral. Like, how did that, like, how did that feel?
Well, they only, at the time, they only peaked out of the Control Point community. You'd see some message on a TF2 forum somewhere talking about it. You know, somebody goes, "That's hilarious. Who made that?" You know, somebody who had no idea who we were. But it was probably about like, I think 4 or 5 years after that first album where like we would get on random servers and hear people playing our songs, not having any idea that it was from us. You know, and that was pretty cool. Like that felt good because it's always great to create for an audience, but it's even better when your audience grows without you putting any work into it. I know that sounds kind of dumb, but when you know, when things propagate on their own. And yes, right. Like those songs were good. They're good. They're still good. And I love to have gotten to participate in that.
Have you seen the recent, as in 2 years ago, animated version of It's Beginning to Look a Lot Like Dust Bowl that got almost 2 million views?
Yep. I absolutely have seen that. And I love it. It's funny because I've watched kind of this evolution of the videos about It's Beginning to Look a Lot Like Dust Bowl.
From Gmod to Source Filmmaker.
Yes. And that has made me very happy. I will periodically be, like I said, I'm a little old and I'll get a little reminiscent about projects that I participated in. Right. Because I've been involved in a lot of amazing things. You know, I worked at Mixer, you know, there was the Shaft, my convention PlayOnCon that I've been a part of was incredible. I've been part of a lot of very great creative endeavors, and periodically I go back, you know how you'll be in the shower and you'll remember a conversation and you'll argue with somebody in your head that you argued with like 15 years ago. Kind of sometimes my brain will go back and look over those old things, and I'm arguing with my own history about what would have happened if it had kept growing, you know, if it had kept going. And so I'll go revisit them. And I think it might be a neurodivergent thing. I think there might be a little bit of that in there, in that kind of I want to touch base with these things I've made in the past because they mean something to me. They're a part of the expression I've had as a human, and I want to, you know, when I'm not feeling creative, I want to touch base with the times when I was feeling creative. You know?
Right. And I know the guy who animated that, and I work with him we're working on some TF2 projects right now, me and him, and I talk to him, and he's a really sweet guy, and he actually worked on the Borderlands 3 trailers as an animator.
Nice.
So so that's his like, but that was like that's his like legacy, Borderlands 3 and Dust Bowl and Dust Bowl animated.
Well, that's not unusual. We've actually had a lot of very creative people become highly successful because of stuff where they started dabbling in one of our silly projects.
Right.
You know, Captain Sparkles credits his Minecraft music videos to watching our Minecraft music videos.
That's crazy.
There is a lot of stuff that I've touched base with that has, grown and built, and that's why, I had somebody who kind of picked on me that was like, you talk a lot about things you used to do, and I'm like, yeah, because they were so cool. I did, like, and there are people who saw, for instance, I used to throw this Halloween party where I would build a haunted house and throw a party in the haunted house. And one of the guys who saw my picture posts on LiveJournal ended up becoming a professional haunted house guy. And I was part of his inspiration. And to me, that is so exciting that I was able to inspire other people to be creative on their own. Like, I've joked around that I am the band's band. You'll see an interview with a famous rock band and say, hey, what was your influences? And they'll mention some band you've never heard of. And then they'll interview another band and they're like, oh, so-and-so. And you'll hear the same band. And that's who I am. I've gotten to be part of several bands that have inspired other people to go on and do greatness.
That's a really nice way of looking at it. That's really cool. I like, in general, how would you describe that time in your life? Like, peak of Control Point, like that sort of when you guys got into the rhythm of it.
So when we were really hitting our peak, and I actually look at our peak as post Conan times. in the 80s and 90s, I felt like we were feeling like very seasoned and professional podcasters who were putting out high quality work. We had gone down the path of realizing that we had gotten bored with the game and tried to bounce back from it in a more constructive manner. And that is when I look at our peak performance. And that's also when we were pondering new podcasts and looking at where can we go from here? How can we do this as more than us getting together on, Sunday afternoon, And again, the real key here was how good of friends we were and how much we were excited to promote each other. And to me, that's what I wanted. I wanted to feel like I was a part of a group where we were making good things. And it's what I strive for to this day. Even in my jobs, I don't want highly competitive jobs. I don't want to be in an environment where I'm duking it out with the guy next to me. I want to be on a good team who is working together, who are boosting each other up, and are working in a constructive manner on a project that is meaningful and has good output. And that's so difficult to find. So difficult. And it's difficult to find in entertainment spaces too. I loved doing podcasts with Devil Turnip with Spencer after, I left the Dead Workers Party, but I really haven't found that kind of inspiration to produce as a team in the podcasting environment, so much so that I've thought about taking podcaster off of a lot of my descriptors, even though it was such a huge part of my development as a personality. Right. So I don't know. I that's what it felt like to me. It felt like I got to be part of a team working towards a goal. It's everything I want in my life.
So how different is your life now compared to back then, especially creatively?
Well, I mean, first off, I had kids, and that changes a lot of stuff. Finding the time to put into side projects gets infinitely harder when you have kids. Additionally, I had difficulty finding a job in Huntsville, and I had to move to Atlanta. So I ended up in a situation where, I had to the things I was building were not with people who I was immediately around.
Right.
So there was a lot of change there. Now I did move on, but I kind of switched into a support role after I left the Dead Workers Party. I kept creating a podcast called Core Elements and loved it. I still love all the work I did for Core Elements. And if I could replicate it, I would, but I'm really down on the gaming industry right now. So it's more, I was celebrating the game industry in that podcast, and I'm not looking around. I'm becoming very Jim Sterling in my old age. But the other thing, I moved into more of a support role because I recognized that I was aging. I wasn't as funny as I used to be. I wasn't as quick on my feet as I used to be. And I recognized that it would be better for me to be support for younger, more dynamic people. So I became a project coordinator for Mindcrack for a while, which was an amazing experience. And I got to support a lot of creatives there. I got to work for Mixer at Microsoft for a while, and I got to support a lot of creatives there. But I also, like I said, I've been aging out of it. It's been very difficult for me to find people who want to create video game stuff and include an old man with it, even though I'm younger at heart and more energetic than 90% of them. So I kind of had to back out of that and went into other stuff. Now I still do my convention, PlayOnCon, and I am like, but I even catch myself like there are certain times when I run the costume contest and I feel like I'm on it and funny and killing it and making people laugh. And there are some times where I just feel like I'm welcoming people on stage and asking them the same banal questions every time. So there's a couple of things here. I don't feel like I'm as funny as I used to be. I am less inspired because a lot of my private time now, instead of going, I need to build a giant haunted house and throw a party in it, or, I need to spend a bunch of time making a Minecraft creation. A lot of that time is resting.
Right. Downtime.
Yeah. And I picked up, there are some areas where I'm more creative. I'm an excellent cook. I spend a lot of time cooking nowadays. And then I've also started getting back into tabletop RPGs and stuff like that. So I don't know if that answered your question. I rambled all over the place.
No, it's all right. I interviewed Brent, so.
He can ramble.
Tangent City.
Yes.
But I love tangents because you get a lot more than me just like following this bullet point of questions that I have. Like let's not stray, because then then it's kind of useless almost. Like, because then it's like, what's even the point? I could have just I could have just said, hey, why don't you just write the answers and send me a text, instead of just doing an interview.
And that's what I've learned about interviews is that, don't get me wrong, you get some bullet points down, but then what you want to do is key on how you can base your next question off of what they've just said. And that takes you in some really amazing directions. But at the same time, then you have to find a way to connect your inevitable dead end back to
the. I guess you don't want to be stuck in a shaft. So on that,
yes.
So on that, there was, Shaft was a lot bigger than Control Point ever was.
Mm-hmm.
But how would you compare the two? Not in a sense how successful they were, but how much fun you had making them and participating in those communities.
I felt like we did a lot stupider stuff in Control Point. Like, I feel like Control Point was this area where we got to dabble. The radio plays that we did, the Uber server stuff, we didn't feel as much inspiration for that particular kind of podcast creation at that point in our podcasting careers. Now, we did do Let's Plays with the Shaft that involved a lot of creativity and a lot of editing and a lot of work, stuff that I still think is revolutionary to this day. I don't know anybody that's done Let's Plays like we did with The Shaft. However, the amount of stupid stuff we did for the Christmas episodes and for the radio plays with Control Point, that was unique and crazy.
Right.
Once we got into, however, once we had refined our video podcasting techniques, our ability to make non-edit podcasts, when we first started Control Point, super editing, everything was chopped up, and we cleaned parts out. And by the time we got to The Shaft, our goal was hit record and go. And then when we're done, we'll bleep out the bad words, we'll edit anything that doesn't is completely bad and doesn't work. But our goal was to make a recorded episode from start to finish where we could just stick the bumpers on the end and in the middle and go.
Right.
And so that's where we were different. And then we focused a lot of our attention during the Shaft days into building our YouTube audience with making Let's Plays that were beyond anything. I don't know. Did you watch any of our Shaft Let's Plays?
A couple, but I've not put in as much time into looking at Shaft stuff than I have Control Point stuff, sadly.
So what was incredibly unique about that is, again, Dead Workers Party was a film production studio. So we took our Let's Plays and then we presented them like if we were putting out a normal movie or a video,
Right.
or a TV show. We had intros that were unique for each Let's Play. We had musical themes that would come in and out of the various parts. We added ambient sounds. If we went into a cave, we added reverb. If we went underwater, we muffled it. We added sound effects. One of the things that I loved is we met a guy named Batman, and I did that little like very far in the background, like you could barely catch it, and we ended up making, as far as I know, the only Minecraft Let's Play movie ever called Father, where we took all of our Let's Play and Eric edited it together into 1 2-hour movie where we did this, heavy narrative Let's Play with high quality editing and put it out as a movie. I don't think anybody's ever done that stuff. And we had 2 problems with that style. First off, raw live Let's Play started becoming really popular with people just logging on and playing with their friends, talking over each other, and it was working. We were doing stuff that took a lot of work. It would sometimes take us a week to edit a single episode, and we'd have 12 episodes. So we're putting out 1 episode of this show every week, and meanwhile people were popping out, unedited Let's Play all the time.
Right.
And we were a 3-person team at the Shaft, and other channels had to support 1 person. So the amount of money coming in,
Right, it inevitably got split.
right. So it took us longer to make content, and then we split that content's proceeds 3 ways. And that was troublesome. But it was that was a different kind of amazing experience that I loved as well. But I felt like we got to be goofier, and we put a lot more energy into things people would say were crazy when we were with Control Point.
Well, now maybe it's impossible to compare, but when comparing the community you cultivated, or the Shaft community or the Control Point community, which one did you end up liking more, as in watching what they were doing, interacting with them, etc.?
Well, again, a lot of the people that were in our Minecraft community had come from the Control Point community.
Right.
We got mint condition Joe Hills, a lot of the people that we were tight with Control Point came to our Minecraft community. And so it's hard to separate those two communities.
Right.
The main difference was the scale of who we were reaching out to, and the fact that we ended up like working with content creators who ended up with millions of followers on YouTube.
Right.
And so it was neat going. Nobody ever asked for my autograph when I was with CP. It wasn't until the Shaft that people were like, "Hey, can I get your autograph?" And so it was just a difference in scale.
Right.
But a lot of the same people were involved, and it was both the community building experiences were exceptional. Just slightly different focuses.
Well, would you say
rather than having, a group of 100 people who regularly rotated on the server,
right,
we're looking at a group of 50 people, 50 or 100 people who were on our server, and then like hundreds of thousands of people who were just listening to the show.
right,
It was a
right.
different kind of community.
Right. So would you describe the Control Point community as a lot more homely and like, you know what I mean, like cozy in a sense?
Yeah, well, it was a lot more tight in that you spent a lot more time in communication with certain people.
Right.
For instance, Freckles. Like Freckles was great. We played so much TF2 together, and she did Minecraft as well, but I felt like my interactions with her in TF2 were much more direct than my interactions with her in Minecraft. It was a different style. There weren't 50 people within visual range of each other on the Minecraft server.
Right. Everyone went their own way, and
Right. And most of the chat on the Minecraft server wasn't in like a TeamSpeak server or anything like that. It was chatted with typing, or you might jump in with one or two people in chat. The fact that the voice comms over Team Fortress 2 or over a TeamSpeak server were so much, more central to the experience, provided much more direct contact with the individuals there.
right, because I imagine like people are about to push the cart or something, and everyone's yelling over each other, and you really feel this sort of sense of belonging in that yelling
Yes.
than you would in just reading a Minecraft chat that's in the corner.
Right. Yes, absolutely. There were a lot of Minecraft experiences that that are hard to describe. Like one time when I was when I was involved with running one of the Minecraft servers, there were some people who like were planning on their whole joke was, bring me the head of Wes Wilson. And so there were these whole subcultures in Minecraft community that I only found out about, that were involved me, that I only found out about later. Whereas on, Team Fortress 2, if any kind of Wes Wilson subculture started, I was involved in it. I was involved.
You knew about it first.
Yeah.
So, like, I guess nearing the end of the interview, can you give me your like thoughts on Control Point concisely, that like in general, like everything from the community, from making the show, how would you describe that entire experience in a couple short sentences?
When I think about Control Point, I think about an amazing community that was really excited to support some creatives who wanted to do stupid things and be a part of the creative process of making ridiculous, amazing things that most people would not take the time to do. Who makes a bunch of video game Christmas carols? Who does it? Nobody does it, because it's, unless there's an audience there already for it. We didn't make that for a huge audience. We made that for ourselves and the few people we had at the time.
Right.
And that kind of support for our creativity and giving us the ability to, go too far. Because there were a bunch of times we had an idea, and that's the next sentence. We had a lot of ideas that we got to take too far and have people laugh because of how far we went. We took dumb ideas like Uber servers and just kept going and just kept going. And to me, the fact that we got to do that with a supportive community, it's the best.
Thank you so much. Well put. Now, I asked you to describe your control point, the entire experience. Now, can you do that in just one word? All of it, blanket into one word.
One word. I mean, I can do it in two. Yes, and that's kind of how we did everything.
Right.
Do you want to do this? Yes, and let's do this. To me, yes, and is kind of, it's what I want in my life, and it's what I got out of that experience.
That's a good answer. Thank you. Eric's was train wreck.
Which is, and I'll be honest, like it's funny that Eric said that, because Eric did most of the editing on almost everything. So what he got to do was take our train wreck and polish it.
Right.
And so that was a lot of his experience with Control Point, was taking this mad chaos and turning it into a presentable product. And I think he learned a lot from that as well.
Thank you so much for answering all of my questions. This was a really good chat, and I hope the listeners have had a nice time listening to it. So, I guess to cap off, for all former Control Point listeners, do you have a final message to beam?
Oh, that's a tough one. I am just happy that you got to participate in something that I still value to this day as an amazing experience. And I know the people who were involved, there are people who still have Control Point in their Steam tags because of how valuable that experience was to them. And I'm glad. If there is anything that makes me that makes me shine inside, is that there were people who got to participate with things that I was involved in that they still value. And thank you. And I'm glad we got to do this. And I hope you're creating and doing crazy things like those that inspired you back in the day.
If you're listening to this, that means you probably listened to the whole thing. Let me know what you thought in the comments. I had a lot of fun interviewing them, and it's, I'm very proud of this project. And thank you, Wes, Eric, and Brent, for talking to me. All right, bye-bye.